What is up guys, I'm Benji from BenObi Tech, and today I'll be reviewing the iPhone 13 mini and tell you guys whether or not you should buy one. So without any further ado, let's begin. Now, don't let the small form factor fool you, because this mini iPhone is literally a mini beast. So this is the second generation iPhone mini in a way. There's been quite a lot of improvements, which I'll be mentioning in this video. And honestly, with such a big display on such a small form factor, it's literally the perfect size. I can easily hold it with one hand and not have to do weird hand gymnastics to be able to reach the notification center or the control center, which is a super nice feature. I think one of the only downsides to a smartphone this small is being able to use the keyboard, and that's something that I was worried about before I picked this up. I was expecting to make so many typos, and it's been fine. If you have smaller hands like mine, it's not that big of a deal. And a funny thing about this smaller size is that as I've been using this, every time I go to a bigger phone like an iPhone 12 Pro, even my Galaxy S10 Plus, which was the phone that I was using before this one, those displays feel huge. And this size is just, it's so good. You just have to try one in person to be able to kind of get a taste of what it feels like to have a mini iPhone. So the design of the iPhone 13 mini is pretty much the same as the iPhone 12 mini, with three key differences. The first difference is the camera module. Apple switched to a diagonal camera placement for this iPhone in order to accommodate Apple's new sensor shift technology, which is incorporated in the main lens on the iPhone 13 mini, making the lens bigger. So instead of having it vertical and making the camera bump bigger, they decided to put the cameras diagonally, so then they could keep the camera module a little bit smaller than what it could have been. And honestly, it looks good. It's a good way of telling between the 12 lineup and the 13 lineup. The second key difference is that the notch is 20% smaller. It is kind of noticeable when you hold two iPhones side by side, one with the bigger notch and one with the smaller notch. But honestly, it's not really that big of a difference. A notch is a notch. It's still going to intrude on your content. But honestly, in my experience, just like with any other phone that I've had with a notch or a punch hole, you kind of start noticing it less and less as you use it, because then you kind of get used to having that piece of the screen where you can't see anything or you can't do anything on. And there have been some people that have actually been complaining about the notch on the iPhone 13 lineup because it's slightly taller, slightly thicker than previous generations. So when you're watching a video in 2x1 on YouTube, for example, it slightly cuts into your content. I noticed this right away, but then as you use the phone and as you get used to it, it's honestly not that big of a deal. It cuts a very, very small amount of video, and honestly, most of the time, there's not going to be really anything interesting or important in those few pixels that are covered by the notch. And this can also always be fixed in a software update. YouTube could just update their app. But as developers get more and more used to this different notch, I'm sure the notch cutting into 2x1 videos will no longer be an issue. The iPhone 13 mini comes in 5 colors. They're slightly different from last year's iPhone 13 and 13 mini. We have Starlight, Midnight, Product Red, Blue, and a new pink. I picked up the Product Red version and I absolutely love the color. And if you're not a big fan of the colors, you can always stick a skin on your phone. It's not that big of a deal. Shout out to Extreme Skins for sending me some of their amazing skins. If you're interested in picking one up, links will be in the description below. Other than that, the iPhone 13 mini's design is pretty much the same as last year's iPhone 12 lineup. The iPhone 13 mini has a 5.4-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display with a 1080p screen resolution and 476 pixels per inch. Speaking from a usability standpoint, the display is great. Unfortunately, we don't have ProMotion like we do on the iPhone 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max, but the 60 Hz on the iPhone 13 mini is honestly really good compared to some other phones. This feels a lot smoother, and honestly, if you're not a big numbers display freak who needs to have 120 Hz or at least 90 Hz, this display is completely fine. I have no issues with it, even though I've tried 120 Hz displays before. The iPhone 13 mini has the second best chip in any iPhone ever, the A15 Bionic. The reason why it's the second best is because the Pro models have a slightly better processor. But honestly, even considering the size of this phone and how they've managed to pack such a powerful chip in such a small form factor is just mind-blowing to me. The iPhone 13 mini also performs great in games. I've been putting it to the test with PUBG Mobile and PES 2021, and honestly, it handles everything I've thrown at it so far like an absolute champ. Also, the iPhone 13 mini is the smallest smartphone that I know of that has 5G. And for those who are privileged enough to have 5G that actually works in their area, congrats to you. 5G is a bit overrated, so don't buy this phone just because of 5G, because you're going to be disappointed most of the time. Another thing to note about the iPhone 13 mini is that this phone will be getting 5 to 6 years of software updates, which means you'll be getting iOS 20, maybe even iOS 21 or beyond that, which compared to a lot of its competitors like Samsung, OnePlus, Xiaomi, Google, they're not getting that many software updates. One of the best parts about the iPhone 13 mini is the cameras, and both of the sensors on the back are a pretty big improvement from last year's iPhone 12 mini. On the back, we have a 12 megapixel wide camera with Apple's sensor shift technology, which last year was exclusively available on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And considering the iPhone 13 mini is such a small phone, it's crazy how beast the main camera is. And for those who aren't really sure what sensor shift is, all you have to know, it just makes image stabilization a lot better and faster and more reliable. That's about it. And next to that wide angle lens, we get a 12 megapixel ultra wide lens, which is also a big improvement from last year's models, especially in low light. Both lenses have the ability to record in 4K at 60 frames a second, which is amazing. And on the front, we get a 12 megapixel selfie camera, and you can also record up to 4K at 60 frames a second on that lens too. And overall, these cameras are absolutely amazing. A new feature with these cameras is now photographic styles, which enables you to choose and customize presets to make your photos look just the way you want them to, which is a great tool for smartphone photographers. So if you want your photo to look more vivid, cool, or you want a little bit more contrast, you can change all of that with photographic styles, and honestly, the result is awesome. Another big camera feature we get on the 13 mini is cinematic mode, which is essentially portrait mode video. And it kind of works, but sometimes is kind of flaky. Of course, it's kind of the first generation product, so of course, don't expect it to be absolutely outstanding. So if you take a lot of videos with your phone, or you want to shoot a feature film, cinematic mode is pretty good. And it's not flawless, of course, and it really struggles sometimes with hair and certain objects at times. But that's because the bokeh is all done digitally, so it's a little bit less reliable than a physical lens. Of course, this is not going to replace any cinema camera, but it's still pretty cool that you get that feature in an iPhone now. And another downside to cinematic mode is, unfortunately, it's limited to 1080 at 30 frames a second. Which for people like me is a little bit of a deal breaker, but I'm sure it will improve over time with software updates and future iPhones. If you want to have portrait mode video and you're okay with 1080 at 30 and you're okay with it not being 100% reliable all the time, it's good enough. One of the biggest issues with the iPhone 12 mini that a lot of people were complaining about was the battery life. People weren't able to get through the whole day without having to charge once or twice or having to carry around an extra battery pack. But now with the iPhone 13 mini, Apple claims that you can get more battery life compared to the iPhone 12 mini. And I personally have not owned an iPhone 12 mini, so I don't really know the comparison, but in my daily use, the iPhone 13 mini's battery has been pretty good. I normally finish an average day with about 10 to 20% if I haven't charged it, and normally I'd be using social media, checking or replying to emails, looking at how much money I've made from Shiba Inu, Shiba's on the rise by the way, and even watching some YouTube videos. Now, if I start playing certain games for an hour or so, I may need to charge my phone for a few minutes or after using maps for a few hours as well. But honestly, the battery life is good enough to get you through the day. And if it gets really bad, then you can always throw a MagSafe battery pack on there or plug your phone in for about 30 minutes using a fast charger, and you should be good for the rest of the day. One of the biggest advantages to going with the iPhone 13 mini as opposed to the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 13 Pro or Pro Max is the price. It starts at $699 in the US and £679 here in the UK for 128 gigabytes, which is an upgrade from last year's base model, which was 64 gigabytes, and 128 gigabytes is pretty much enough for the average person. That's what I went with. Most people nowadays will use cloud storage, so like iCloud storage, or so maybe you have Google Photos or Amazon, so you don't need that much storage on a phone anymore. So in conclusion, should you buy the iPhone 13 mini. I definitely recommend it. You're getting the best of iOS in such a small package without any big compromises when compared against the regular iPhone 13 and 13 Pro models. In fact, I think the only difference between the iPhone 13 mini and the iPhone 13 is, of course, there's the price, which is $100 difference, but it's also the screen size. Other than that, they're basically the same phone. And the battery life, yes, it's not outstanding like the iPhone 13 or the Pros are, but it's still good. Performance is amazing. The cameras are amazing. For myself, the price and the size make it all worth it. Also, considering this may be the last iPhone mini for at least another couple years, this is the best year to try an iPhone mini out. So if you want to pick up an iPhone 13 mini, I'll drop some affiliate links in the description below, which if you use, some of that money will go and support the channel, and it'll be much appreciated. So will you be getting an iPhone 13 mini or not? Let me know in the comment section below. Click here to subscribe as I post tech videos like this one every single week, and turn on notifications so then you don't miss them. And click here to watch a video that YouTube would recommend you watch from the channel. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I'm Benji from BenObi Tech, and I will see you all in the very next video.